A woman in simple joggers and a white t-shirt was being escorted out of an exclusive boutique by a manager in a meticulously tailored suit. Whispers stirred among the polished crowd as curious eyes followed her every step. "People like you don't belong here," he sneered under his breath. She didn't argue. She didn't look back. She walked away with her dignity intact, her head held high, leaving only silence in her wake. 1 hour later, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and a man stepped out, broad-shouldered, calm, his designer tie catching the morning light. Without hesitation, he moved toward the boutique's glass doors. The golden sun bathed Rodeo Drive in a soft, relentless glow, just as the quiet power of reckoning began to descend. There are places where smiles greet you, and there are places where simplicity gets you judged. Today's story begins on Rodeo Drive, a paradise of luxury handbags and razor-sharp glances. A woman dressed in joggers and a plain white tee simply wanted to buy a birthday gift for her husband, but within an hour she was kicked out of a boutique by a cold, judgmental manager. And another hour later, that entire boutique and every person who had humiliated her would be forced to kneel before the truth. She wasn't just a customer. She was the wife of the new owner. But this story isn't just about a plot twist. It's about dignity, kindness, and how one woman turned pain into transformation. Los Angeles, a warm autumn morning. Sunlight glided down like velvet on tall palm trees, and rows of million-dollar convertibles snaking along Rodeo Drive. This isn't a place for simplicity. Everything here, from sparkling window displays to unlisted price tags, whispers, "If you have to ask the price, you're not the clientele." So when a woman in a plain white t-shirt, pale grey joggers, and nameless sneakers strolled slowly down the avenue, her head turned, but not out of admiration. Elena Royce, 39, wasn't browsing jewelry displays or ogling luxury handbags with longing. Her eyes were focused. She was looking for one thing, and she knew exactly what it was. Not the most expensive, just the most meaningful. That line echoed in her mind again and again, like a gentle reminder. Her husband, Nathaniel Royce, would turn 44 this weekend. 15 years together, not always smooth, but always real. And to Elena, the most precious things weren't diamonds or awards. They were the small things, like the way he poured her coffee each morning, or how he wordlessly placed his hand on her back when she felt uneasy in glamorous crowds. Elena smiled softly when she saw the golden-lettered sign ahead, Maison Valette, the only vintage watch boutique left on this street. No loud ads, no grand openings, just one quiet door she had to walk through to finally lay eyes on the timepiece she'd been researching for a month, a 1961 Chronomaster, with only 5 pieces ever made in the world. She checked her watch. 10:30 am. Still an hour and a half before Nathaniel arrives. She wanted it wrapped neatly, in velvet, maybe even with a handwritten note. "Time hasn't made me love you less. It's only made me realize every minute with you is worth it." Elena took a deep breath before reaching for the door handle, not out of fear, but because she knew entering a place like this, dressed as she was, wouldn't be pleasant. But today, she wanted to be herself. No makeup, no gown, not as the billionaire's wife, just Elena. If they can't respect a woman who dresses simply, they don't deserve to sell the gift meant for the man I love. The glass door swung open. A soft bell chimed. No one looked up. Inside Maison Valette was another world, cool, fragrant, and so quiet you could hear the faint strains of classical music floating from hidden Bose speakers. Above were sparkling crystal chandeliers, in front of glass counters lined with black velvet, each watch displayed like a treasure. Elena stepped in, her soft rubber soles made barely a sound on the marble floor. No greetings, no glances. Maybe they're just busy, she told herself, but inside, a chill stirred, not fear, but something familiar, being silently looked down on. She walked toward the center display. There it was, the Chronomaster, pearlescent dial, rose gold trim, hand-engraved signature on the back. She'd seen the pictures and studied the history, but standing in front of it, this gift, she believed to be perfect for the man who made her feel chosen every day. Her heart skipped. A female voice pierced the silence, low but sharp. "Can I help you with something?" Elena turned. A woman in a fitted black dress, hair in a tight bun, brows sharp enough to cut glass. Name tag, Jasmine Lynn. "Yes." Elena smiled softly. "I'd like to see that Chronomaster, the one with the pearl dial." Jasmine's eyes flicked to Elena's outfit, a 3-second scan that seemed to summarize Elena's entire bank account. "That piece." Jasmine hesitated, then emphasized, "Costs $85,000. Elena nodded, unfazed. "I know. I've already picked it out. I just want to look at it more closely." Jasmine raised an eyebrow, then exchanged a glance with a colleague, a tiny shake of the head, a half smile. "This is the look. The window shopper who wants to feel rich for 5 minutes look." Elena recognized it. She used to be a retail clerk. She knew that look. Jasmine's smile returned, polite now, but still guarded. "Perhaps I can suggest a few pieces more, aligned with your style. We have some lovely inspired vintage lines, much more approachable price points." Elena met her eyes, still soft, but firm. "Thank you, but I'd like to see the one I requested." A pause. Jasmine sighed, then reluctantly pulled a tiny key ring from her dress pocket. She walked over and unlocked the case, deliberately slow, as if handling something too precious for the likes of Elena. She placed the watch on a velvet pad. The space between them wasn't just physical, it was a wall. "There are only 5 in the world," Jasmine said, implying the rarity might scare Elena off. But Elena simply smiled, gently lifting the watch like it was something far deeper than luxury. "You'll love this, Nathaniel. It carries the breath of time, just like how you've always been patient with me through every season of life." "I'll take it," Elena said softly, still gazing at the dial glinting in the morning sun. Jasmine froze. "Take, as in, you'll buy it now?" Elena looked up, meeting her eyes. "I can pay immediately. I just want it wrapped before my husband arrives." Jasmine's tone dropped half a notch, still wary maybe. "You'd like time to think it over? Or we can discuss financing options, if needed." A bitter drop landed in Elena's heart. Still that look, the one that says, "Someone like you doesn't walk in here to buy, you walk in to dream." But Elena didn't flinch. She simply replied, "No need for financing discussions. I'm prepared." From across the room, someone noticed a man in a grey suit, hair slicked back, standing by a marble column, watching like a hawk. Elena felt his gaze on her back, steady footsteps approaching, unhurried, unhesitant, the stride of someone used to issuing commands, not taking them. "Is there an issue here, Jasmine?" A man's voice, smooth yet cold, very cold. Elena slowly turned. A man in his early 40s, dressed in a navy bespoke suit, Italian leather shoes, a Patek Philippe watch on his wrist. His eyes didn't meet hers at first. They scanned her from head to toe before allowing themselves to see her. The name tag on his chest, Harold Penn, store director. "This customer is interested in the Chronomaster," Jasmine said, her voice slightly defensive, "but she hasn't provided any financial documentation yet." Harold shifted his gaze to Elena. No smile, no greeting, just appraisal. Madam," he said, his voice the polished product of luxury management training, "this is one of our most exclusive pieces. and per store policy, we require some verification before proceeding. Elena tilted her head slightly, calm. I already explained to Jasmine. My husband, Nathaniel, will arrive in about an hour. I'd like to purchase it as a surprise birthday gift for him. A smirk flickered across Harold's lips. Not a pleasant one. Ah, a husband. Of course, his eyes said louder than words. She's making up a rich husband. I understand, he nodded slowly, but the reality is, you haven't presented any method of payment. And frankly, his eyes dropped to Elena's sneakers. We have encountered people who enter here just to take pictures, pretend, post on social media. Elena straightened her posture. I don't need designer clothes to prove my finances, she said, each word crisp. I came here to buy, not to pretend. Harold blinked, then smiled thinly. He turned to Jasmine. Perhaps you could show her some other models, sale items, or replicas, maybe. At that moment, others in the boutique began to notice. A middle-aged couple glanced over, pretending not to eavesdrop, but unmistakably listening. The coldness in the air wasn't from the air conditioning. It was the chill of silent judgment. If I walk away now, I'll be telling the world they're right, that my worth is measured by my outfit. But if I stay, I'll have to endure more. Elena gently placed her hand on the glass counter. I would like to pay now, before my husband arrives. It's supposed to be a surprise. Jasmine opened her mouth to respond, but Harold raised a hand to stop her. No, he said flatly. You are not a genuine customer. You're wasting my staff's time. You're insulting me, Elena said, her voice low but no longer soft. I'm protecting this store's reputation, Harold replied, stepping closer until only inches separated them. Someone like you should try their luck at the downtown mall instead. Someone like you. Those words rang louder than anything else. Elena stood still, not because she didn't know how to react, but because she was choosing. Stay silent to preserve her grace, or respond to defend her dignity. She looked at Harold Penn, a man whose smile was honed like a pencil sharpener's blade, and asked, very quietly, You truly believe I can't afford this just because of what I'm wearing? Harold didn't answer, but his eyes said everything. Behind the counter, Jasmine folded her arms and turned away. No smile now, but no intervention either. Around the boutique, customers pretended not to listen, but silence sometimes cuts deeper than knives. Madam, Harold said, his voice dropping half a tone, I'll say this one last time. If you cannot provide financial proof, I will have to ask you to leave. Immediately, Elena tightened her grip on her handbag strap, not out of fear, but because she felt like she was standing trial, where joggers were evidence of guilt and simplicity was treated as deceit. I shouldn't have to prove anything to be treated like a human being, she said, her voice trembling slightly, not from weakness, but from anger. You don't know who I am, and frankly, that shouldn't matter. Harold tilted his head, stepping even closer, close enough to invade her space. Exactly. I don't know, and I don't need to know. What I see is someone dressed like she just left the gym, wanting to buy something that costs half a year's salary for the average person with no credit card in hand. He smiled a smile that couldn't mask the contempt in his voice. If you're serious, come back when your husband arrives. If he exists, if he exists, if she exists, if kindness still exists in this place. Elena turned to leave, but paused. Part of her wanted to let it go, to protect her peace, but another part wouldn't allow it. She turned back. One last time. You haven't made me feel small, she said quietly. You've only made it clearer. Civility isn't about status. It's about character. Harold chuckled dryly. Someone like you doesn't belong here. Maybe try the discount watch stores downtown. He lightly tapped her elbow, a touch polite enough to avoid lawsuits, but firm enough to usher her out. And so, the glass door behind her opened again. No welcoming bell this time, just a blast of rodeo drive sunlight on her white T-shaped shoulders. The glass door swung shut behind Elena. She stood alone. Among the bustling crowds, she suddenly felt hollow. Faint laughter floated through the glass. Eyes stared through it. A clerk pointed and whispered something that made the others chuckle. Elena lifted her head. If I can't keep the gift a surprise, I'll at least keep my dignity. She squared her shoulders. She didn't look back. Elena stood there, on the polished stone sidewalk of Rodeo Drive, among the glittering sports cars and the hurrying silhouettes. Life went on as if nothing had happened, but inside her, something had cracked. The breeze played with her hair. The slanting sun made her squint, but not enough to hide the distance growing in her gaze. Just because I wasn't wearing a suit, just because I wasn't made up, 15 years married to one of the most powerful men in the city, and standing alone, I'm still treated like disposable trash. She inhaled deeply. This wasn't the first time she'd seen it, but it was the first time it had been paraded, so publicly, so shamelessly. No rage, just something sharp and aching, lodged behind her sternum. No tears, but if someone touched her shoulder now, she might shatter. A door opened behind her. Elena remained still, not turning back. A woman's voice called out, gentle, warm like a familiar movie soundtrack. I saw everything. Elena tilted her head slightly. A woman stood next to her, holding a small, elegant shopping bag, oversized sunglasses framing her face, her hair styled in soft vintage waves. Despite her casual attire, she radiated an unmistakable presence. Elena recognized her immediately, a Golden Globe-winning actress, a regular on magazine covers, and the face of a luxury perfume brand. The woman slipped off her sunglasses. Her brown eyes met Elena's tender, deeply human. I was at the counter, in the back. I saw how they treated you, and I'm so sorry. Elena gave a small, wry laugh, half bitter, half grateful. It's not your fault. The actress shook her head. No, but what? I was once as someone like you, before I was famous. I know that look that says you have no right to exist in that space, simply because you're not dressed according to the code. Elena turned to face her emotion, flickering for the first time. I'm not asking for a red carpet. I just wanted to buy a gift for someone I love, without having to prove anything. The actress nodded slowly. Her gaze understood every word Elena spoke. A chauffeur approached, opening the door of a black Range Rover, parked a few steps away. The actress placed her hand on the door, then turned back. I don't know who you are, but the way you walked after everything they did made me want to witness it. Don't let them turn it into shame. Turn it into a story. Elena didn't answer, but when the woman stepped into her car, Elena gave a small nod. I don't need applause, but being seen by a stranger not with judgment, but with recognition, is enough for a full breath. She checked her watch. 11:40 am. Nathaniel will arrive in 20 minutes. Part of her wanted to wait there for him, but another part didn't want him to see what had happened. She walked, slowly, not leaving entirely, just moving to soothe herself a little. Don't let them see you as if you're waiting for forgiveness. Thus, Elena stepped away from the boutique's glass door, leaving behind the lingering laughter and the thick, unspoken humiliation hanging in the air. Meanwhile, a black Range Rover pulled up to the curb just steps away from Maison Valette. Sunlight bounced off the windshield, illuminating the man adjusting his tie inside. Nathaniel Royce, 44 years old, chairman of Royce and Wells Investment Group, was not the type of billionaire splashed across tabloid covers. He was the kind who could silence a boardroom with a single glance. He checked his watch. 11:45 am. She's always punctual. He gestured to his driver. Wait here, James. I won't be long. Nathaniel stepped out of the car, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a deep blue tailored suit, handmade Italian shoes, silver streaks at his temples. He wore time not as something to hide, but as a badge of a man who had survived storms. He scanned the area. No sign of Elena. She's probably inside, picking out something. Definitely for me. She's always so thoughtful. He walked toward the boutique door. Just then, a middle-aged woman intercepted him. Her outfit was modest, but refined enough for Nathaniel to recognize. She had recently been inside. Excuse me, are you Nathaniel Royce? He paused. His sharp brown eyes appraised her carefully, the habit of a businessman, trained to measure every word from strangers. Yes. May I help you? The woman lowered her head slightly as if embarrassed by what she was about to say. I thought you should know. Your wife was thrown out of that boutique, right before my eyes, very unfairly. Nathaniel said nothing, but his eyelid twitched almost imperceptibly. They humiliated her for dressing simply. The manager and staff looked at her as if she were a thief. I just thought you should know. A beat of silence. Then Nathaniel nodded, calm. Thank you for telling me. The woman placed a hand over her chest and then walked away. Nathaniel pulled out his phone. His thumb hovered over Elena's name, but he didn't call. Instead, he opened the messaging app and typed to his assistant, "Reschedule my 2 p.m. Something came up. A reply came within 30 seconds. Done. Everything okay, sir? Will be, Nathaniel responded. Only 2 words. He slipped the phone into his inner jacket pocket, stood still, did not rush. Through the boutique window, he could see 3 people laughing. One of them, the man with the cold eyes and the theatre of authority, had to be Harold Penn. Next to him, the female clerk smoothing her dress, laughing along. They were joking, as if what had happened earlier was morning entertainment. Nathaniel's gaze swept slowly across the room. He didn't look angry, but something within him had stilled, like the surface of a lake just before the lightning strike. They think they just kicked a random woman out of the store. They have no idea they just slammed the door on an entire empire. And then he saw her, Elena, returning slowly from the far end of the street, steady as ever, but in her eyes something unmistakable. She had endured, but she was still standing. They met eyes, and in that brief, silent moment, Elena paused, then quickened her steps toward him, trying to conceal something in her heart. I just went for a little walk, she said, placing her hand lightly on his arm. Nathaniel touched her hand gently, firmly, so she would know. He knew. Someone told me what happened, he said, still staring at the boutique door. Elena looked down. It's okay. Just prejudice. I'm used to it. He didn't reply, but his shoulders shifted slightly, the way they did when he was about to walk into a negotiation where the outcome was already decided. Nathaniel, no one gets to treat you like that, no matter who you are, he said, very quietly, but as sharp as tempered steel. Elena touched his arm again, a silent plea not to escalate, but she knew nothing could stop a man from stepping forward to defend the woman he loved. He doesn't need rage, because the greatest storms always arrive in silence. Inside Maison Valette, the atmosphere remained leisurely, as if nothing had happened. Harold Penn was finishing a joke to Jasmine and another clerk, his voice low but full of smug innuendo. She said she was buying it for her husband. Maybe he's out there driving Uber somewhere. Jasmine laughed this time. No need to hide it. Other nearby customers, if they heard, simply smiled knowingly believing this was a familiar tale in a place for the elite. The door opened, the bell chimed. No one looked up immediately, assuming it was just another browser, only the soft whoosh of the glass door swinging shut, and the quiet, firm click of leather soles on marble. Nathaniel Royce. His shoes tapped lightly, steadily across the stone floor. Harold turned by habit, a manager trained to welcome Sikhs on instinct. He smiled and stepped forward, turning on his professional charm. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Maison Valette. I'm Harold, the store direct." Nathaniel didn't stop, didn't extend a hand, didn't smile. He simply locked eyes with Harold and said, voice cold and deep, "I believe you just threw my wife out of your store." The words sliced through the room. Silence fell instantly. Jasmine froze, her eyes widening. Nearby customers halted mid-sentence, bags and credit cards dangling awkwardly in mid-air. Harold's brow furrowed. He forced a chuckle, attempting recovery. Oh, there must be some misunderstanding. At that moment, Elena stepped in, quiet, poised. Her gaze swept across the room, lingering on Jasmine, not with hatred, but with a quiet, deep stillness. Harold looked at Elena. The color drained from his face. Elena gave Nathaniel a small, almost imperceptible nod. Nathaniel glanced at her, then back at Harold. "I assume you recognize her now." No one spoke, but the silence spoke volumes. Nathaniel stepped back half a pace, surveying the boutique, the staff, the customers, and then refocused on Harold. "And I also believe you refused to sell her an item because you didn't see sufficient financial qualifications, correct?" Harold swallowed hard. His polished manager's voice faltered. I didn't intend to offend. I was merely following protocol." "And what is your protocol?" Nathaniel asked calmly, but the weight behind each word was unmistakable. "Judging customers based on their clothing, based on your imagination." Harold said nothing. Elena slowly moved forward, pointing at the chronomaster still lying untouched in the display. "That was the watch I chose, but instead of selling it to me, they chose to throw me out." Nathaniel nodded slightly. "Good." He turned back to Harold. "Then you have two options. 1. Complete the transaction my wife initiated. 2. Prepare for a special conversation with the new ownership." Harold stiffened. "Ownership?" Nathaniel calmly pulled a card from his jacket and placed it on the glass counter right in front of Harold. Bold letters, "Royce and Wells Capital, Private Equity Division." Harold stared at it, his lips parting, searching for words he couldn't find. Nathaniel turned back to Elena, his voice softening finally, "After all morning, do you still want to give me that gift?" Elena nodded, her smile faint but resolute. Nobody in the boutique moved. No clerk dared to approach a display. No customer dared to leave. Everyone understood. They were witnessing something larger than a botched sale. Harold Penn stood frozen, his hand hovering uselessly over the glass counter, sweat beading at his temples. Jasmine's mouth hung slightly open, staring at the card, as if it were a sword hanging over her career. Nathaniel faced Harold directly, voice steady. "You know who I am now, so I trust you understand Royce and Wells Capital finalized the acquisition of this boutique chain 2 weeks ago. Today marks the official transfer of control." A strangled sound escaped Harold's throat. "Mr. Tewantansept Royce, I wasn't informed." Nathaniel smiled faintly, not kindly. "And you think, if you had been informed, you would have behaved differently?" Harold opened his mouth to protest, but Nathaniel raised a hand, a simple, quiet gesture more commanding than any shouted order. "No excuses necessary." Nathaniel spoke loud enough for everyone in the boutique to hear. "The problem here isn't that she's my wife. The problem is that you forgot the most basic principle of luxury service. respect for human beings, not their bag, not their credit card, their humanity. A middle-aged couple near the door exhaled audibly, perhaps feeling ashamed for witnessing and staying silent. Nathaniel turned back to Elena, and for the first time, his gaze softened fully. You kept your dignity. When everyone else in this room had already lost theirs, Elena squeezed his hand, not to restrain, but to share the moment. Nathaniel addressed Harold once more. I'm not firing you, not because you don't deserve it, but because I want every employee across this brand to understand. Prejudice doesn't just lose a sale, it loses the very reason to exist. Harold lifted his head slightly, stunned. Nathaniel placed a thin folder on the counter. Starting next week, Maison Valette will launch a mandatory training program, Beyond Prejudice, Rebuilding True Sophistication. And I'm proud to announce, he turned to Elena, eyes full of quiet pride, my wife, Elena Royce, will co-design and oversee the program. A ripple passed through the boutique. Jasmine nearly dropped her pen. Another clerk staggered slightly. Harold's mouth opened, then closed mute with helplessness. Nathaniel continued, or you can resign. Right now. Your choice. Harold looked down, defeated. Between disgrace and redemption, he chose silence. But the authority he once wielded had evaporated. Nathaniel turned back toward the display. Elena, do you still want that watch? She smiled for the first time that morning. It's perfect, just like it was when I first walked in, even if no one saw it. Harold's hands shook as he wrapped the chronomaster in velvet, sealing the bag with a Maison Valette gold sticker. He placed the bag on the counter with trembling fingers. Thank you, and please accept my apologies. Elena accepted the bag, her gaze steady, not with hatred nor with pity. I don't need you to apologize to me, she said softly, but to yourself for still believing that a person's worth is tied to their wallet. Nathaniel nodded at her. He turned to the room full of silent staff and stunned customers. Don't remember today as an incident. Remember it as a beginning. No one dared to respond, but in the eyes of the younger clerks, Elena saw something shifting, shame morphing into awakening. And then, together, Nathaniel and Elena walked out of Maison Valette. No music, no flashing cameras, no fanfare, just the soft tread of a billionaire's leather shoes and the gentler steps of a woman who had defended her dignity, not with rage, but with unshakable grace. As they stepped out onto the sunlit sidewalk, Maison Valette seemed to hold its breath behind them. A middle-aged couple near the door gave Elena a small, respectful nod. A young woman, perhaps just a passerby, pulled out her phone and recorded the moment, but this time not to ridicule, to preserve a story that deserved to be told. Whispers rippled through the street like a rising tide. That's Nathaniel Royce's wife. She got thrown out for dressing casually, and then her husband turned out to be the new owner. Elena didn't look back, but she heard it all, and this time the words didn't stab her heart. They simply floated past, harmless. Nathaniel opened the car door for his wife. Elena slid in, placing the velvet gift bag gently on her lap, her fingers lightly brushing the edge, as if it were proof of something far greater than a purchase. Nathaniel entered from the other side. The SUV rolled away from the curb, merging into the noon traffic under the blazing Los Angeles sun. A boutique clerk rushed out to shut the boutique doors behind them, but it was too late. The story had already escaped those glass walls. It would spread across Rodeo Drive, across luxury gossip circles, across every place where judgment used to feel so easy. Inside the SUV, silence enveloped them like a soft blanket. Elena turned toward Nathaniel. You didn't have to do that. I didn't need anyone to defend me. Nathaniel turned to her, his eyes warm like a clear sky after a storm. I know. You didn't need me to stand for you, but I will always stand with you. A smile touched Elena's lips, not triumphant, not tearful, but the quiet smile of someone who had finally been seen, truly seen. The most valuable thing in this world isn't locked behind boutique glass. It lives in the way we see each other before labels, before judgments. They arrived at a historic hotel atop Beverly Hills, where an old-world restaurant overlooked a lush green valley. Soft piano music floated from a corner, conjuring memories of their old quiet hours, afternoons when no words were needed, just presence. Elena stirred her drink slowly. On the table beside her salad sat the velvet watch box. Nathaniel placed his napkin across his lap, leaned back slightly, and watched her, the woman who, after all these years, still made him feel like he was seeing something rare. "So," Nathaniel said, voice low, "will you forgive them?" Elena tilted her head thoughtfully. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," she said softly, "but I don't want to carry their ugliness inside me. They're not worthy of space in my heart." Nathaniel nodded, smiling, not the smile of a victor, but of a man who had seen the light return to the soul of the woman he loved. She didn't need protection, she needed recognition. Elena turned the velvet box slowly, then opened it with deliberate grace. The chronomaster rested inside, quiet, timeless, not a trophy of wealth, but a testament to the right to be treated with respect, no matter the labels, no matter the packaging. "You know," she said, her eyes still on the watch, "there was a moment today when I thought I'd never walk into another luxury boutique again." Nathaniel chuckled quietly. "There was a moment today when I thought about shutting down the entire chain." They both laughed, the kind of laughter that only people who had weathered storms together could share. Elena lifted her gaze, her eyes sparkling. "But then, I thought, this shouldn't end with retaliation. It should start something bigger." Nathaniel tilted his head, waiting for her to continue. Elena spoke slowly, clearly. "I want to turn this into a real training program, not just for Maison Valette, for the entire luxury service industry, teaching them what real sophistication is about, recognizing the human behind the simple clothes." Nathaniel was silent for a moment, simply watching her. Then his voice, deep and sure, rumbled like a cello. "You've always seen the person, not the packaging." Elena smiled gently. "Because I know how it feels to be misjudged, and I know the hurt of being seen as less than simply because you don't look worthy enough." Nathaniel reached across the table and touched her hand lightly. "We'll make it happen. Together." That lunch had no champagne, no birthday cake, just two people, one who had once been dismissed, and one who refused to let her stand alone. And from that quiet lunch, a movement was born, the Elena Project, a training initiative to promote dignity, inclusivity, and emotional intelligence in the luxury service industry, one that would spread to major cities around the world. Months later, a major magazine would run a feature story titled "The Woman Who Was Kicked Out of a Boutique and Taught an Entire Industry a Lesson." But Elena didn't care about the headlines. She was happy simply knowing that that day, when Nathaniel walked through that boutique door, he hadn't come to rescue her. He had come to build something better with her. Elena never needed to prove anything. She didn't need anger to reclaim her dignity. She simply stood there calm, unyielding, and let those who judged her come to their own reckoning. But what people remembered most was not that she was the wife of a billionaire. It was that she chose forgiveness and turned one humiliating morning into a mission to teach people how to truly see each other in a world too quick to judge. Maybe what we need most isn't status, isn't a black card, isn't a custom-tailored suit. It's a heart that knows how to see another human being with respect, even before knowing their name. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you believe that dignity doesn't come from a label, share this story, because somewhere out there, someone might just need to be seen for who they truly are.